It began like any ordinary Thursday evening in the peaceful suburbs of Clearbrook, Texas. The warm hum of cicadas echoed in the trees, porch lights glowed amber, and nothing, absolutely nothing, was supposed to go wrong. Grace Mitchell had just finished cleaning up after dinner, the scent of lemon soap still clinging to her hands as she wiped the counters. She hummed a tune under her breath, one of those melodies she never really thought about but always found herself repeating. In the living room, her husband, Thomas, a tall, calm man in his late 30s with a quiet sense of humor and tired eyes from a long day, flipped through TV channels, not really watching anything. Their modest home was painted in soft sage with clean white trim. It was nothing fancy, but it was theirs, peaceful, private, and simple. A reflection of the life they'd built. That illusion shattered in an instant. A sudden, brutal pounding rattled the front door. Grace flinched so hard she dropped the dish towel. Thomas sat upright on the couch, alert. The knock came again, louder this time. Not a knock, a fist. Several fists. Then came the yell. HOA enforcement. Open up. Grace's blood went cold. HOA enforcement? That wasn't a thing. She looked at Thomas, who stood slowly, brow furrowed in confusion. Before he could even reach the door, the knob twisted violently. Someone was trying to force it open. Then, with a loud crack, the door slammed inward, with splintering as it crashed against the wall. 3 men in black tactical gear stormed into the house. Each one was armed with what looked like military-grade rifles. The letters HOA were duct-taped sloppily across their chest plates in white tape, like someone was trying too hard to look official. One of them, a red-faced brute with bulging arms and sweat dripping down his temples, shouted, "On the ground. Hands where we can see them." Thomas barely raised his hands before they threw him to the floor, his face scraping across the hardwood. Grace screamed, backing into the kitchen, legs numb and hands shaking. It felt like a nightmare, the kind where you scream but no one hears you, where everything happens too fast to make sense. "Please. You can't be here. We didn't do anything," she cried out. The nearest intruder swung his rifle toward the ceiling and barked coldly, "Violation of Community Code 4.1c, illegal modifications and failure to comply with inspection notice." Inspection notice? They'd never gotten anything like that. Grace couldn't even process what was happening. In the kitchen, 2 men had gone completely still. Her twin brothers, Noah and Wyatt Jensen, had flown in that week for a visit, recently retired Navy SEALs, both in their early 40s, still fit and steady as steel. They'd come for barbecue, beers, and family time. They didn't need to speak. They didn't need to move, not yet. Their eyes met across the room. Silent communication forged from years in combat zones. They sized up the intruders in seconds. Twitchy, untrained, sloppy formation. These weren't real law enforcement. Worse, they were armed in a civilian home. Unauthorized. Unlawful. Noah's voice was low and sharp. "Grace, step away from the counter." She did, slowly. But the leader, the brute, stepped toward her, eyes glinting with something vile. "Pretty house. Pretty wife. Shame it's not up to code." He leaned in just a little too close. That was the last mistake he made. Noah moved first, a blur of precision, grabbing the rifle and twisting the man's wrist until it snapped with a wet crack. The gun clattered to the floor. Wyatt followed immediately, driving his elbow into the second man's chest, folding him in half before slamming him into a side table. The third intruder raised his weapon, but Wyatt was already on him, a sweep and twist sending the man face first into the floor. It was over in less than 15 seconds. No shouting, no drama. Just terrifying surgical efficiency. Grace backed into the wall, eyes wide in disbelief. Her brothers had just dismantled 3 armed intruders like they were nothing. Thomas groaned, rolling onto his side. What the hell? What the actual hell just happened? The brute, now face down on the floor, whimpered. His arm twisted behind him, pinned beneath Noah's knee. "We're authorized. Community enforcement. This is legal." Wyatt scoffed, dragging the second man across the floor like a rag doll. "Legal? With duct tape badges and unregistered weapons? You're lucky we didn't take this a different direction." Grace, still shaking, grabbed her phone and dialed 911. "Yes. We need police. Now." 3 armed men pretending to be HOA officers broke into our house. "They're restrained." "Yes, my brothers are military." "No, we're not hurt. But we could have been." Noah leaned in closer to the groaning man. You have no idea how deep you just walked in. The house was chaos, broken furniture, a cracked picture frame on the floor, a thin line of blood seeping from one of the intruder's noses. But the air had changed. It wasn't fear anymore. It was fury. Outside, sirens echoed in the distance. The next few minutes unfolded in a blur. Real police swarmed the home. Guns drawn. Commands barked. But within moments, the situation was under control. The fake officers were zip-tied, their weapons secured. Grace and Thomas gave statements. Noah and Wyatt explained everything with the calm, controlled demeanor of men used to crisis. Detective Carl Branson, a grizzled man with a steel-gray beard and sharp eyes, arrived just as the attackers were being hauled out. Branson looked at the duct-taped HOA lettering and muttered, Jesus, these idiots even made themselves a name. Grace stepped forward. What happens now? We take them in, Branson said. Question them. See who's behind it. But I can tell you this much, real HOAs don't work like this. Someone took that authority and twisted it into something else. Even as the intruders were loaded into cruisers, Brent the Brute sneered at Noah. You think this is over? You don't know who you're dealing with. That one line echoed in Noah's head as the flashing lights faded down the street. What followed was a web of corruption that shook the entire community. Brent and the other attackers cracked under pressure. The name Carla Dorsey came up, president of the Fairview Hills HOA, a woman with a history in corporate compliance and a reputation for being ruthless. She runs the board, one intruder confessed. She said they were troublemakers. Told us to make sure they understood the rules. Branson's eyes narrowed. This wasn't the first time. 2 other homes had been hit in similar inspections, but no one had fought back before. Until now, there was no proof. Now they had it all: false badges, unregistered rifles, and most importantly, a trail. Carla had built a private enforcement squad using HOA funds. She fined people into submission, scared them into selling, then flipped their homes through shell companies for profit. And the Mitchells were next on her list because they didn't cave. The next morning, a letter was slipped under the door. No stamp, no return address. Just thick paper embossed with a stylized CD in a shield. The message read, You think calling the cops was smart? We are the authority here. You broke code. You resisted inspection. Sell your house or we come back harder. Branson read it and shook his head. This confirms everything. She's branding threats now. Arrogant. Over the next 2 weeks, residents began coming forward. Anonymous messages poured in. Photos. Emails. Secret recordings. Carla had threatened dozens, forced families to repaint, to sell, to shut up. One woman lost custody of her kids due to false noise complaints filed by Carla's task force. A paper trail emerged: fake LLCs, money laundering, and shell companies, all leading back to Carla. Branson secured a warrant. And at 6:47 a.m., law enforcement knocked on Carla Dorsey's door. Not politely. She opened it in her silk robe, expecting to issue orders. Instead, she was handcuffed, charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, intimidation, racketeering, and operating an illegal enforcement unit under color of law. Residents stood on their lawns and watched as the woman who had ruled them with fear was led down her pristine walkway like a common criminal. The silence in the neighborhood that followed wasn't just relief. It was rebirth. Weeks passed. The old HOA signs came down. Lawsuits were filed. Assets were seized. Over $1.4 million in fraudulent fines and property flips were traced back to Carla. A new community group formed, voluntary, transparent, and based on unity. Grace and Thomas hosted the first neighborhood gathering in years. There were hugs, laughter, tears. People who hadn't spoken in months now greeted each other with warmth instead of fear. Noah and Wyatt prepared to return home to Colorado. But they stayed long enough to see the flag go up, a hand-stitched white banner with 2 diagonal blue stripes. No slogans, no branding, just a quiet message: peace, vigilance, unity. On their last night, the family sat together on the porch. No sirens, no shouting, just crickets, breeze, and healing. You think she'll fight the charges? Thomas asked. Noah shrugged. Maybe, but she'll lose. Wyatt grinned faintly. If you need fear to hold power, it was never yours in the first place. And in the soft quiet of a neighborhood finally reclaiming itself, that truth echoed louder than any siren ever could.